All right, good day, good morning, good evening, good night to you wherever and whenever you're watching me. This is your brother and friend Maurice. And what are we talking about? Well, we are continuing our exciting series of studies on God's temple of the heavens and earth. Our topic is Moses and the temple of the heavens and the earth. You're watching the new Kosmos Videocast.
This is the new Kosmos Videocast. You've never heard it like this anywhere. Welcome.
And welcome. So we are continuing this interesting series of studies on God's temple of the heavens and earth. This is our fourth video, by the way. So to see the previous three, I will put the link to the playlist on the top right hand corner of this video, or you may visit the new Kosmos Videocast channel. Look in the playlist God's temple of the heavens and earth. And you would really need to watch the previous videos because each video in this series builds upon the previous one. So to really get the substance and the understanding of what I may be saying in this video or future videos, you need to watch the previous ones. Also, let me encourage you to sign up for a membership on my Patreon at patreon.com/newcosmos. There are 4 membership tiers. If you choose the second, the third, or the fourth tier, you can have access to my videos before they are released on YouTube, up to 2 weeks in advance. And if you choose the third or fourth tiers, you can have access to the new Kosmos Master Class. And so we are looking today at Moses and the temple of the heavens and earth. We looked in a previous study from Adam to Abraham. We saw that there was this pattern of God meeting his priest, and that priest would have a priesthood, and that priesthood would minister to the people. All right. And so we saw that with Adam. We saw that with Noah. Now we're looking at Moses. And Moses came along 400 years later after Abraham, so we are looking at God forming this man out of the dust. All right. Remember, the dust are really the natural people. Okay. When you look at, for example, texts like Numbers 23 verse 10 or Genesis 13:16, the dust are really the natural people. Okay, the natural worshippers are in Genesis 13 case, they were the descendants of Abraham, right? So here we have Moses, who's a descendant of Abraham, so he's a dust of the earth. All right, let me just show you that, if just to in case you are finding what I'm saying a bit strange. And as well, being a Berean, you should always check me out and what I'm saying, right? Look at this. Is Genesis 13 and verse. All right, so look what it says there. This is the Lord speaking to Abraham. He says to Abraham, I will make your offspring as what? The dust of the earth, right? So notice the dust, the offspring, the descendants of Abraham. These are the natural descendants of Abraham. They are dust. So Moses was a natural descendant of Abraham. So God is raising Moses out of the dust, out of the natural descendants, Israel, right? He's raising Moses out of the dust of the earth to make him his priest, to form Moses into his image and his likeness, right? So that's why Moses now had this quote-unquote face-to-face relationship with God, just like Adam had, just like Noah had, just like Abraham had, right? Because this is his priest. This is his high priest who would come into his presence. Moses would go into the cloud. Moses would go into the most holy place, right? And we'll see that in a chart that I have in a little while, right? So we know the history of Moses. Moses grew up in Egypt. He was adopted by the the Pharaoh, the royal family. He grew up in the royal family. He was a type of a Pharaoh as well, right? He was a kind of Pharaoh. He was actually adopted by the daughter of Pharaoh, if I remember correctly, right? So he was Egyptian royalty, even though he was a Hebrew, right? And so at that time also, his people were enslaved during that time as well, right? Now, during this time, God began to reveal to Moses. God began to form Moses by his spirit. Going back to Genesis 1, in other words, the spirit began to move upon the surface of the waters, right? And then God began to say, let there be light. Moses began to get light from God. He began to get revelation. He began to hear the voice of God and understand the voice of God, right? Let there be light. All right. And when Moses got the light, you know what happened? Israel began to separate from the waters now, right? The first thing God said, take my people and lead them out of Egypt, right? You got to separate the land from the waters, right? Anyway, you need to go back and watch my previous series, not the previous video now, the previous series, which was entitled The New Kosmos. Go and watch The New Kosmos. That's a playlist on my New Kosmos Videocast channel. And there you're going to see all about biblical creation, right? Anyway, so God called Moses up on the mountain to reveal to him this pattern of the temple of the heavens and earth, right? And God, so we're going to look at that. And Moses called that, when Moses constructed the sanctuary according to that pattern, he called it the tent of meeting or the tabernacle of meeting, depending on which translation you're looking at, right? So, for example, in Genesis 33 verse 7, it says there, Exodus 33 verse 7, sorry, not Genesis, Exodus 33 verse 7, it says there, now Moses used to take the tent or the tabernacle, the Hebrew word there is ohel, and pitch it outside the camp, far off from the camp. And he called it what? The tent of meeting. Who was meeting there? The priesthood, the heaven of the priesthood, and the heaven of God. God meeting the earth, right? That was where the heavens met the earth, right? And everyone who sought the Lord would go out to the tent to meet. So here the heavens, that is the everyone there. Sorry, the earth is the everyone, and the heavens would be the Lord and his priesthood. Good? And so let me just demonstrate that to you in this chart I have here, which is the pattern of the Eden, Sinai, and the sanctuary. All right? The sanctuary was the tent, where we just read there, the tabernacle. Well, the tabernacle contained, if you want to be more specific, the tabernacle or the tent of meeting contained the sanctuary, the holy and the most holy places. Okay? And that was in the pattern of Eden and Sinai. Okay? So, for example, we have here these, we have 3 columns, Eden, Mount Sinai, and the sanctuary, and you have 3 rows. The first 2 rows are labeled the heavens, right? So we have the heavens of God and we have the heavens of the priesthood, right? That's why you have the heavens, heaven of God, heaven of the priesthood. And then you have the earth, right? That's the people. Remember we just read there in Genesis, I keep saying Genesis, in Exodus 33:7, where the people who wanted to seek the Lord, they would go to the tent of meeting. They were not allowed inside the tent of meeting. They would do so at the curtain, right? Only the priests were allowed in the tent. Good. But anyway, so you have the earth meeting the heavens at that tent, right? So when we look at Eden, you remember now you had Adam in the garden where God dwelt. That's Genesis 3:8. Genesis 3:8. They heard the voice of God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. So God's presence was in the garden. That made the garden there the most holy place. All right. And then Eden was on the Eden mountain where Adam and his family worshipped at the gate after he was banished from the garden. That would be the realm of the priesthood of Adam's family. Good. And then you would have the earth, which would be the people who would want to seek the Lord, right? Just like in Exodus 33, the people to whom Adam and his family were to minister the knowledge of God, the dust of the earth. All right. So you see how that pattern, you have the heavens, right? Which is the priesthood and God, and the earth, the people who want to seek the Lord. Good. And so we have, for example, Genesis 13:16, talking about the dust of the earth and so on and so forth, right? Let's look at Genesis 13:16 just to see what that says. It says, and I will, this is God speaking to Abraham, I will make your offspring as the dust. Offspring, dust. People, dust. Okay? Similarly, in Genesis 2, verse 7, with Adam, and the Lord formed the man of the dust. Okay? Man, dust. Okay? Man taken from dust. And then God formed him now, giving him the breath or the spirit of life. That is when now Adam moved from being a natural man or dust to spiritual man, priest, right? Again, if you want to see more about that, go back and watch the previous playlist, the previous series, which is in the playlist, The New Cosmos. That's the name of that. That's the title of that playlist. What we are in a new series of studies now, which is the Temple of the Heavens and the Earth. All right. So let's go back to our chart here. And so we have that pattern in Eden. So at Mount Sinai now, at Mount Sinai, where Moses met God, or God met Moses on the mountain to deliver to him the old covenant, we see that same pattern again, right? So we have in Exodus 24, right? So maybe we should read. Yeah, let's read from Exodus 24, verse 1 to 18, right? That's a lot. And then we'll come back to the chart and point out some things, right? So let's do it from the scripture first. Exodus 24, verse 1 to 18. So here we go. Then God said to Moses, come up to the Lord, you, Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu. Nadab and Abihu would be Aaron's sons. So all of this, Moses will be the you here. You, Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 elders of Israel. This is the priesthood, right? This is the priesthood. And notice what the Lord is saying to them. Come up. Come up where? Come up on the mountain. Right? And worship how? From afar. Okay? So the priesthood would be worshiping from afar, but they would be on the mountain. Good? And then it says, Moses alone, so here's the high priest, right? Moses alone shall come near to the Lord, but the others shall not come near, and the people shall not come up with him. So now you have Moses. He's the high priest. He's going to go into the heavens of God, heaven of God, right? The others shall not come near, but they would be on the mountain. That's the other priests. That's the priesthood on the mountain. And then the people now, notice the people shall not even come. They are nowhere on the mountain. They are at the level, ground level, right? They are the dust of the ground, right? So they are on the ground level. The people shall not come up with him. They shall not even touch the mountain, as you will see, right? So Moses came and told the people all the words of the Lord and all the rules, and all the people answered with one voice and said, all the words that the Lord has spoken, we will do. And Moses wrote down all the words of the Lord. He rose early in the mountain and built an altar at the foot of the mountain and 12 pillars according to the 12 tribes of Israel. So notice now, this altar at the foot of the mountain represents the brazen altar. So when you look into the sanctuary, the wilderness sanctuary that Moses will construct with the courtyard, and then the sanctuary in the courtyard. In the courtyard, at the gate of the courtyard, there was the brazen altar, right? That represents this altar at the foot of the mountain. All right? Yeah. And then he sent young men and so on and offered what? Burnt offerings. You see? Peace offerings. So this was the brazen altar. And notice it's at the foot of the mountain, right? And Moses took half of the blood. We can skip all of that. He took the book of the covenant. Let's skip all of that. And so now, verse 9. Then Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and the 70 elders. So the priesthood now goes up on the mountain, right? The priesthood goes on the mountain. So this is the heaven of the priesthood. Good. Remember we looked at this, I think in last study or the study before, where I showed you the mountain of Eden, right? And how that is similar to, in terms of the layout, the temple layout. This is the same thing you're seeing here again with the Sinai mountain, right? So they went up and they saw the God of Israel. There was under his feet, as it were, pavement of sapphire. But notice they saw him from afar. Okay, because remember in verse 2, they said, worship how? From afar, right? So they saw the God of Israel, probably an angel depicting something that manifesting the presence of God, because the scripture says no man has ever seen God, right? So they either saw an angel, the angel of the Lord, which would be Christ here, pre-incarnate. But anyway, there was on his feet, as it were, pavement of sapphire stone, like the very heaven for clearness. Notice the very heaven. So on the mountain, you have heaven, right? On the mountain, you have heaven. So that's why I'm saying on the top of the mountain. If we look at this chart, the creation temple chart, you'll see here where Adam went on in the garden on the top of the mountain. That is what? The heaven of God, right? The same thing happened on Mount Sinai. They saw the heaven of God because the presence of God was there. And in Eden's case, you had Adam in the presence of God. In Sinai's case, you had Moses in the presence of God. In Eden's case, you had Adam's sons, God's priests, Cain, Abel, etc. In Sinai's case, you had Nadab, Abihu, and the 70 elders. All right? These were the priests, the heaven of the priesthood, right? So you see that pattern is repeating, right? And then the people, those who wanted to seek the Lord, the dust, right? They were at ground level, representing also in Eden, these would be the people whom Adam and his family would minister to, right? So I hope you see that. So let's go back to the Bible now. So Moses and the 70 elders and Aaron and his sons, they saw God in heaven. That's on the top of the mountain. But except for Moses, who went into the presence of the Lord, the others they saw him from afar, right? And he did not lay his hand on the chief men of the people of Israel. They beheld God and ate and drank. The Lord said to Moses, come up to me on the mountain and wait there that I may give you the tablets of stone, the law and the commandment which I have written for their instruction. In other words, come, let me breathe on you the spirit of life. Let me make you into my image and likeness. That's the making of Moses now. What you're seeing here is the making or the forming of Moses, just like how God formed Adam, the forming of Adam, giving him the spirit of life, right? And forming him into the image and likeness. That was through knowledge of God's laws, God's spirit, God's character, etc., right? The light of God. So Moses rose with his assistant Joshua. Moses went up into the mountain of God, and he said to the elders, wait for us there. We will return to you. You remember when Jesus said, I will come to you. I go to the Father, and I will come back to you. Right? Now, when Moses said here, wait here, and we will return to you, did Moses come back 2,000, 3,000 years later? No. He came back, 40 days, I think, later, right? But in other words, the point I'm making, he came back to the very people whom he promised to return to, right? Now think about Christ. Christ said he was going, and he told the people whom, his disciples, he told them that he would come back to them so that where he was, they would be also. So therefore, you can't have Christ still 2,000 years later not having returned to the very people to whom he said he would come back to. Right? And it is because this very reason, what we are looking at here, this pattern is the same pattern with Christ. Right? And it's because people don't understand this pattern is why they're still looking for Christ to come back in our future. Because they don't understand the pattern of the temple of the heavens and earth. Right? Here Moses is going into the Father, he's going to God. And he tells the elders on the mountain, he's going to come back to them. Similarly, the 12 apostles were Christ's priests. Right? They were the priesthood on the mountain. And he said he will go to the Father and come back to them. Right? Yeah. So he says, wait there, we will return to you, and so on, right? Moses went up to the mountain, and what now? A cloud covered the mountain, right? Notice that a cloud covered what? The mountain. And the glory of the Lord dwelt on Mount Sinai. So what does the cloud represent? The glory of God, right? The presence of God. So we have Moses going into the cloud. We have Jesus going into the cloud. And the cloud represents what? The glory of God, right? And the cloud covered it 6 days. And on the seventh day, he called to Moses out of the midst of the cloud. And the appearance of the glory of the Lord was like a devouring fire at the top of the mountain in the sight of the people of Israel. And Moses entered the cloud, right? Just like Jesus. A cloud received him out of their sight, right? And went up on the mountain, and Moses was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. Good. So when we examine that now in our pattern here, we see that Moses alone, we're in the Mount Sinai part here now. We looked at Eden already. So we're looking at Sinai now. At Sinai, Moses alone could come near to God in the cloud on the top of the mountain, just like Adam and Eve alone could have gone into that Garden of Eden. Good? And then, so that was the heaven of God, right? The heaven of God. They saw God, and under him was the clearness of heaven. The elders on the mountain, Nadab, Abihu, the 72 elders, worshipped from where? Afar. They were not allowed in the cloud with Moses, right? So that's the priesthood. When you look into the, when after Adam and Eve were cast out of the garden, right? They were no longer allowed in that most holy place. And so to come to meet God, they would come to the entrance of the garden where the cherubim were. Okay? We're going to talk about the cherubim just now, right? So they were not allowed into that most holy place, the elders on the mountain, even though they were the priesthood, right? And then the people now on the third level, which is the earth, the people and animals, which would be the sea. So this would be the earth and the sea. So you have heavens, earth, and sea. But the sea in the context of those Gentiles who joined themselves to the covenant people, right, of Israel, right? So they were the people and the animals. Remember, God said to Moses, not even the animals were to touch the mountain. There is that, you'll find that in Exodus 19:12-13, right? So let's just come here. Exodus 19, verse 12. Look what it says there. What God told Moses, he said, you shall set limits. This is before they went up on the mountain, right? So we had 19, they went up on the mountain in chapter 24. So we are, 5 chapters before. He said, that's God speaking to Moses, Moses, you shall set limits for the people all around, saying, take care not to go up, right? Do not go up into the mountain. Don't touch the edge of it. Okay? Whoever touches the mountain shall be put to death. No hand shall touch him, but he shall be stoned or shot, whether beast or man. Okay? So, no man, no beast. Now we know in the context of covenant, man, Israel, beast would be Gentile, right? But anyway, so we see there that this pattern of the heaven, the earth, and the earth plus the sea in terms of the Gentiles who wanted who were the mixed multitude in this case. At Sinai, you remember when the Israelites left Egypt, well, a large portion of Egyptians left with them, right? And they were called the mixed multitude, right? So that was the earth and the sea mixed, right? When you look when we go over to the sanctuary now, you have the high priest, like Adam, like Moses. Now, the high priest alone could enter the most holy place of the sanctuary to meet with God. If you go to Hebrews 9, it tells you clearly, it says, these preparations having thus been made, the priests go regularly into the first section, that is the holy place of the sanctuary, performing their ritual duties, but into the second section, which is the most holy place, in other words, which is the top of the mountain, which is the Garden of Eden, it says, only the high priest goes. You remember what God says, only Moses was to come up into that cloud, right? Only Moses was to go into the heaven of God. So that's what the most holy place. Now, in the tabernacle, in the tent of the sanctuary, represented that same coming into the presence of God. And he but once a year, not without taking, etc. Right? So we notice only the high priest goes into the second section, which was the most holy place, which is the top of the mountain, which is the Garden of Eden, like we see in here in our chart here, right? So the priest ministered in the holy place. That's the priesthood of the heavens of the priesthood. And they were not allowed in the most holy place, which was the heaven of God. Only the high priest was allowed there. And then you have the earth now, which the people, which will be Israel in the sanctuary case, to whom the priests were to minister the knowledge of God. They were the dust of the earth, and the Gentiles with them were the sand of the sea. All right? And so again, you have Numbers 23:10. Let's see what that says. Numbers 23:10. Let's get the Bible up. Good. It It says, who can count the dust of Jacob? So you notice, Jacob is dust, or number the fourth part of Israel. So notice, Israel, Jacob, dust, right? So the dust of the earth, descendants of Abraham, right? But also you have in Genesis 32:12, but you said, this is Abraham or is it Jacob? I think this is Jacob. God speaking to Jacob. I will surely do you good and make your offspring, so you're talking about people, as the sand of the sea. Okay, so you notice when we come back to our sanctuary here, we see that pattern of the heavens, the earth, and the earth would be with the sea. Now, when you look in the sanctuary here also, there was what is called a laver, or a huge brass basin, which was filled with water, and that was called the sea. All right. And even though that brass basin was big, it was not big as the courtyard. So the courtyard, which really represented the covenant people of God, the dust of the earth, in that covenant context, was always more than the sea, right? Because under the old covenant, there were always more Israel, or more descendants of the 12 tribes in the covenant than Gentiles, right? So that's the pattern. Right? That's the pattern that we have been seeing consistently, the pattern of God's temple of the heavens and the earth, right? So we have come to the end of this fourth video in the series of God's temple of the heavens and earth. It was entitled Moses and the Temple of the Heavens and Earth. If you appreciate this content, please like, share, and subscribe. And you may support the ministry by giving or by becoming a Patreon member. And as I said, there are 4 membership tiers with associated benefits at patreon.com/newcosmos. If you choose the 2nd, the 3rd, or the 4th tiers, you can have access to my videos before they are released on YouTube, up to 2 weeks in advance. And if you choose the 3rd or the 4th tiers, you can have access to the New Cosmos Masterclass, which deals with understanding your true identity in Christ, what God has obtained for you through the new covenant inheritance, what God put in place when Jesus returned in 70 AD, what was accomplished, and how you can benefit from it. You may also purchase one or all of my books, or you may purchase a mug, a t-shirt, a sweater, or a hoodie from the merchandise store. The links to these are in the description, or if I remember, I'll put them in the first comment. So until next time, I'm your friend Maurice saying, may God richly bless you.
This has been the New Cosmos Videocast. Remember to comment, like, subscribe, and share.